What games do you enjoy playing? Maybe you prefer substance over story, gameplay where you can get right into the action without needing to think about characters or worlds. Or maybe you enjoy story-based games where you can get involved within the world that the developers have designed. But maybe you like games about humanity, about the mind and our perception of the world, how we deal with things such as grief. Now, I want to preface, I am not an expert in dissecting games like this. Everything in this video is what I've taken away from these experiences. I also highly recommend that you play these games for yourself before watching this video. If you somehow haven't experienced milk outside a bag of milk yet, either through playing it yourself or watching it through somebody else, this video is not the way to experience it for the first time. Go play it. I also highly recommend you to buy Louisoac. It's cheap, not very long, and a great game. There's also an incredibly interesting DLC coming soon, which is only further reasoning for you to get it. They come in a bundle together, it's incredibly worth it. Go buy it. Now, with that out of the way, let's get into discussing. Looking up, I see only a ceiling. The game opens with a strange figure staring over us, telling us to wake up. Later on, we will learn who this person is, but right now, to both us and our protagonist, this strange figure's identity is unknown. As our protagonist wakes up, she explains how, as much as she would like to enjoy the beautiful day outside, she needs to spend the day inside and study. This is our first glimpse into who this character is and her situation, and we can actually learn a lot simply from the first room. Inspecting her desk allows us to see books and journals filled with anatomy and health-related studies. It's very clear that her studying has taken over her life, and upon further examination, we see anime and manga surrounding anatomy. Even her leisure has been filled with studying. I want you to remember how easy it was for us to receive information about this character from the very first room. This isn't a bad thing by any means, but when we move on to Milk Outside a Bag of Milk, you will understand how these two games, which deal with similar ideas in terms of the human mind, treat their protagonists very differently. As soon as we exit the bedroom to find the kitchen, we see more about our protagonist's life through the boxes around her house. The hallways and even the kitchens have cardboard boxes, implying that she just moved to this home. Even when clicking these boxes, we learn that she does want to move them, she just has no time due to her studies. After we make breakfast and go to the sink to clean the dishes, we discover an item that at first glance seems useless, but will soon become the most important item in the game. A pair of bloody scissors. Our protagonist doesn't seem worried about how these scissors just appeared in her sink or why they're bloody, but I believe these scissors symbolize more than they may appear, and I'll get back to that by the end of the game. Upon attempting to leave the kitchen, we are faced with a strange sight, a dark hallway with a calendar on the wall pointing to the left. Trying to leave reveals that the door we used to enter has disappeared. Our only way forward is deeper into this strange place. From the moment we touch those scissors, nothing will be the same. Taking a moment to look at the piles of books we are forced to crawl through reveals that they read human body. These books are similar, if not identical, to the textbooks our protagonist is studying in her room. Later on, we'll get a clearer understanding of why these books are here, but for now, we must continue on. Entering the next room, we are met with another strange sight. A shadowed man falling over holding even more calendars. Our protagonist seems to recognize the date on the calendar, but before we learn why, his hand reaches out and grabs it. This is him. It isn't a title. This is literally his name according to the merch and the Steam badges. This is also why I've been calling our main character just protagonist, because she is just called her or Ceiling Chan. I just thought it'd be fun to make a connection between this and Milk, since the main character in that game is Milk-chan, according to the fans. Anyway, he thanks us for helping him, welcoming us to this place. He describes it as a library, saying there are many books to sort out, but he has no time because he's busy marking the days on calendars. When our protagonist says she wants to go, he questions us and scoffs when she implies she wants to go back home. Again, this is another hint that things are not quite as they seem, if that wasn't already clear. There's something quite interesting you can actually miss if you immediately leave the room. If you hang around and click on the stranger, you actually get some interesting dialogue where he mentions deadlines and, eventually, a test on Friday. We know our character is a student and this strange person is stressing over tests and deadlines. He may have more importance in our protagonist's life than we originally thought. As we leave the strange place, exiting from where our bedroom is instead of the kitchen, our protagonist is a little confused. She decides she'd like to freshen up first, but the bathroom is locked due to a storm. The key to the bathroom is located in her room inside one of her journals, a tactic she uses when there's a big test coming soon. However, before we can leave, she hears something from outside. Instead of some scary monster, it's actually just him again, although it's not quite sure how he got in our window. He points up, then leaves without another word. This part of the game is interesting to me because it could mean a lot of things in general to the story, and soon enough you'll understand what I mean, but it's also a little confusing because we never actually understand what specifically he is trying to say to us. With the key in our possession, we are finally able to enter the bathroom. Entering the bathroom, everything seems normal at first as we are steered to the mirror, getting our first good look at the protagonist. After she's finished her morning routine, we pan back to the floor as it breaks open, revealing a chasm. Shadowy hands rise from it, sneaking up and grabbing our protagonist's neck. She is taken aback, coughing and saying it felt like she was getting choked. Investigating the bathtub will reveal a mannequin has somehow appeared out of nowhere and, according to our protagonist, it's positioned in the same way she usually takes a bath. Attempting to step away from the hole in the floor causes us to meet him again. When we ask if he came from the floor, he replies that these kind of pits scare him. After a bit, he materializes a watch, telling us we're running out of time. He says it won't be easy to get out of here, that this place helps us think about something important that we've forgotten. But before he can explain what to do, a growl is heard from a distance, and he seems disappointed. But, before leaving, he says he believes in us, and tells us to break the loop. Exiting the bathroom, our protagonist comments on how she can swear she hears running water. We decide to look around, but as we look down the hall, a crack is heard in the window. The crack goes larger and larger until water begins pouring in as though we were underwater. It starts to flood the home, and this is where our path splits in two. We'll focus on the bad ending first before going on to the good canon ending. Escaping to our bedroom, we search desperately for anything that could help us. We end up finding a hook for the attic door, and it appears to be our only option. Heading back to the main room, we reach up and open the attic door, climbing into a strange place. It's dark and there are other similar trapdoors along the floor. However, Some of these doors have bodies in them. Attempting to leave is useless as the house is already flooded. We push on through the strange place, unsure of where we're going before a monster with a clock for a face rises out of a trapdoor to grab us. We struggle, but without any way to defend ourselves, we're helpless. We beg for somebody to help us, but nobody hears our pleas. Now, the good ending. If we instead search the kitchen first and go to the sink, we can find the scissors we cleaned earlier. Grabbing them, we can now follow the same steps we did last time until we encounter the monster. Now, we have a way to defend ourselves. We attack the monster with the scissors, forcing him to drop us so we can escape. We run away, reaching the blinding white exit, and on the other side, we wake up in the bathtub. Confused and tired, our protagonist stands up and leaves the bathroom, walking into the main room as everything is now so vivid and bright. Looking around, she feels as though something is off. Looking up, she sees only a ceiling. With a weight off her chest, she decides to get away from everything and leaves her home. Looking up, I see only a ceiling. It's a game about stress. It's about the effects of stress on the mind and how too much can hurt you. Our protagonist learns the hard way, the lack of rest leading to her almost drowning from passing out mid-bath. Most of the game is spent in her dreams, in which we see him, a representation of our protagonist's inner thoughts, trying to get her to wake up and realize that she needs to step away from all the stress. The scissors have stumped me for a bit on exactly what they mean, and I've come to a few conclusions that may or may not be accurate to what the story is trying to tell. The scissors could either be a real physical object or symbolism. What I mean is that the scissors can stand for a hobby, such as crafts or some kind of sewing. The idea is that our protagonist's hobbies are what helps her get away from the stress, and making time for those hobbies leads to her having more time for herself. The other idea is that the scissors represent cutting off the parts of your life that cause so much stress. I personally believe this one more than the first idea, since in the post-game explore mode, we see her desk is now less cluttered with study material, meaning she's taken the time to remove some of the causes of her stress and worry. But there's one important thing about Louisa Weck. Our protagonist, at least for the moment, is able to overcome her issues. She's able to listen to her own voice of reason and move on from her stress and change the way she treats herself. But what if you can't? What if you can't escape from the trouble of your world? Milk Inside a Bag of Milk is a game where you help a girl buy milk. Well, it's a little more complicated than that. We start the game with a girl reciting how she will buy milk. This game takes more of a visual novel style over point and click like in Looking Up, but the sequel will have us return to that style. We, the player, take the role of a voice in the girl's head. She speaks to us as though we are a separate person. We are here to guide her through buying milk. We listen to her ready herself to get milk before we mention how she's taken 51 steps on the grass and 50 in the sidewalk. She's taken aback by this revelation, and it's our very first look into how she views the world. We help her through trying to undo the mistake in her steps, though it's a bit painful trying to get you to understand what we're saying. After some struggle, we finally arrive at the store. When she continues and talks to the first person she sees, they respond only with "oh." This exchange continues on, and she informs us that he's saying "oh" because the letter scares her. She tries to explain by showing us what she sees when she thinks about the letter. She keeps the loop going until she repeats "oh" to the stranger, and they finally leave. We finally arrive at the milk aisle, and she begins spiraling into the idea of milk inside of a bag. Almost every step she takes, we are needed to steer her back into her objective of buying milk. We remind her that the store will close soon, and she arrives at the cash register. Something I'd like to bring up is that I've been cutting out a lot of portions of this game. Getting to this point has taken us around 8 minutes of gameplay. She struggles to interact with the cashier, nearly having a breakdown as she doesn't understand why she can't have the milk. At least, until we remind her that she needs to pay for it. She waits anxiously, but eventually, she does get to buy her milk and leaves the store. She leaves the gas station and mentions how the pills she's taking don't seem to work all that well. The entire time we've been talking to her, she's been treating herself as a visual novel character, and that's helped her do these tasks. However, now she wants to speak to us. Not the voice, but the reader or the player. She finds a bench to sit on so she can talk to us. Now, we use a text box to reply to her questions, although we still can't say much. She acknowledges how the medication hasn't been helping as of recent, and tries to avoid discussing her diagnoses. But realizes that since she made us up, we are her, and eventually, the topic would come up in conversation. She shows us a memory of something vague, and describes it as her father. She states pretty numbly that he jumped out of a window to his death. She thanks us for our help in letting her get milk before the voice interrupts, telling her to continue home, and she obliges. When she gets home, she decides to look out over the railing of her apartment, a ritual she's done 1,000 times, so much so that she stopped being afraid of heights. She mentions that the effects of the drugs have worn off, and now she can enjoy the silence without the voice interrupting her. She also explains how her own thoughts become wild under the medicine, creating a terrible feeling, before she walks back into her apartment. I'll just let this cutscene play out. This isn't actually the only ending in this game. If you are extremely rude to the girl throughout the game, then this will happen. Of course, milk inside a bag of milk is not the game we are focusing on yet, but it is important for context on just who the girl is and how she sees the world. Without the context of the first game, we would be lost during the second. There isn't much to say now that I won't say later, so I'll keep a real in-depth breakdown of the game for after we play milk outside a bag of milk. We start immediately after the first game, the girl talking about how shadows are dancing around her sight as she walks down the hallway. She begins worrying that the cold coming from the door could be a dead body, but she knows deep down that there are no bodies in her kitchen. Yet, she can't shake the feeling and begins to sprint down the hallway. She quickly realizes that she can't slow down in time and slams through the door. Of course, there isn't a dead body in her kitchen, just the bag of milk she got earlier. She begins to feel bad for it, recognizing that the milk was safe in the store and was now in danger. However, as she walks through her room, her mom appears. Her mom grabs her arm, sticking her apparent claw into the girl's arm as she struggles and starts seizing. Her mom demands the girl to say that she'll never drink milk again, and she concedes. This is actually something interesting we learn about the girl, although through a roundabout way. She's likely allergic to milk and suffers greatly from drinking it, with the mom's claw likely being some kind of medicine to fight off the reaction. This adds a unique layer of irony to her struggle to get milk, as she can't even enjoy the fruit of her labor without suffering even more. After this, we see the girl brushing her teeth, lamenting on how tired she is. In front of the mirror, she mentions a couple of things, including how she used to love to sleep. However, slowly, she began to stop dreaming, which was her only reason for wanting to sleep. Now, she has no reason to do it. She looks at her pills, noticing how she doesn't understand how they work individually, only knowing how they work in a group. Wishing to stall for more time, she grabs a single pill, holding it between her fingers and squishing the liquid inside out of it. She's disgusted at how it looks, and then spends the next half hour trying to come up with a reason to not take her pills, creating her own medicine in her head. After this, she wants to brag about her new idea but doesn't want to bother her mom and admits that she really just wants small talk. Then, the voice returns. Although we saw her in the mirror, here we get our first detailed face-to-face look with the girl. It's obvious now, but she appears different to how we saw her in the hallway and while she got milk. Maybe it's because she feels safer in her room, seeing the world and herself as closer to what they really are instead of the distorted purple and red of the outside world, which she's afraid of. She refuses our attempts at helping her go to bed, but us saying that we'll stay quiet seems to almost change her mind. However, she attempts to claim that she doesn't need us, standing up for herself. She glows for a bit, reveling in the small bit of power she's taken. But we begin to berate her with hurtful things, reminding her of how she acted while she was outside. Until she ends up doubting herself and crying, in which we tell her to go wash her face. She stares at herself in the mirror, noticing how she looks. She begins to count in numbers, and it seems to calm her down just a little, the predictable nature of them likely helping. Although, it does give her a slight headache. We apologize, but she blames herself instead of getting angry at us for getting mad at her. She mentions how she felt like she was ready to finally take control of herself, that when she got milk she felt more confident. It's the real reason why she threw away the pills she was supposed to be taking tonight. At the moment, she felt fine, but now she hurts more than ever. Dejected, she takes the pills to keep herself stable. The voice tells her that the idea of her being alone scares her more than the pain of not taking the pills. She lies down in silence for a while, thinking about the cracking concrete above her threatening to fall onto her head. She's not scared of it though, instead believing her death will be from below when she least expects it, waiting for her to lose focus. When we attempt to ask if she wants to talk, she just says no, asking us for some silence so she can get her thoughts in order. We begin to look up at the ceiling with her as she forms her thoughts into orderly rows, attempting to set them up in a way that makes sense. But eventually she gives up. We offer advice in having her imagine her thoughts like swarming cockroaches, but she prefers fireflies instead. They spin through the air for a bit as she watches them, but still can't make out her thoughts. Eventually, she lashes out at the fireflies, standing up and screaming at them. We tell her to start over, but she refuses. She admits that she needs our help still, as all the fireflies have hidden away. She needs to finish the thoughts, as the fireflies were only half thoughts, not fully understood by her yet. She hears a sudden rumble as she realizes the clock has struck midnight. When she asks for our help, we respond with a question, wondering what she was thinking about on the floor. She says we should know better than anyone, but if we reply that we don't know, this plays out. She stands in the middle of her room, shocked at the events that just played out. This was her first death. She asks us for help in finding her fireflies, but even after we agree, insists that we cannot move anything in her room. When we ask why, she struggles to find an answer, but she hasn't put up the same mind block she placed last time when she spoke to the reader. She mentions how being a visual novel character helped her get milk, so being a point-and-click character could help her find her fireflies. We are tasked with being her player, because if she's put into multiple choice situations, she begins to get decision anxiety and can't make up her mind. She goes to the middle of her room and waits for something to happen. After a moment, she finds a firefly hiding in her sweater. It lands on her finger as she carefully holds it. The firefly drifts up, then enters into her ear, returning the thought to her mind, and we are given control to look around the girl's room. Here we have 5 fireflies we are tasked with finding and several other objects we can interact with around her room. Most of the items that don't have fireflies only offer uninteresting comments from the girl, not giving us any information we really care about. Starting with the pills, the girl is disappointed that she almost skipped her dose for the day. Even though she did end up taking them, she only took them because we told her to. She reaches her hand out to the pill bottles, realizing her hand feels warm. A firefly is found within the bottle, flying around her head and entering her ear. Next, we have the notes on the wall. Notably, there are only numbers on the page, apparently the only kind of information the girl can deal with without struggling. However, she already knows all the effects of the pills she takes, implying that she didn't write them. The handwriting is scratchy and more like claw marks. The voice reminds her to thank her mom, but she shouts at us that she doesn't need our advice. A firefly sneaks out from under the notes and enters her ear as she coldly tells us to continue searching. Our attention is turned towards the laptop as we notice it hasn't been used in a long time, despite it being open. Apparently, one of her parents brought it home one day, encouraging her to use it. She mentions that she actually spent a lot of time in front of the laptop, playing games, drawing, 3D modeling, etc. But that all changed when she entered the web. She starts to go on a tangent about how she felt like a hamster living underground until she starts trailing off, clearly a little uncomfortable telling this story. However, we egg her on and she continues, explaining she felt like she was taken out of her calm place and brought to a pet store. Now, her home was a cage. The new place was warmer than before, and she had neighbors in identical cages, all of them looking identical and being the same. After losing track a bit, she continues. She had lots of online friends, exactly 317. Out of those friends, 68 were into gaming, 130 were into drawing, and the other 119 were into calculators and 3D modeling. Notice how when she mentions gaming and drawing, she adds "just like me" after them. It feels like she is happy to find anyone that was even a little like her. The girl explains that she knew no real people existed on the web, that all of them die when she turns off her laptop. She rationalizes that they were just numbers, computer programs. Despite that apparent fact, she still calls them her friends as they share her interests, and everyone who shares her interests are her friends, even if they don't know her. She continues to try and rationalize that everyone online was just code and numbers, none of them meaning anything actually. But one day, she met someone. Someone that, apparently, was very good at tricking her. However, before we learn what happened, a firefly exits the laptop, blinking something. When we tell her it's a cipher and ask if she has any interest in cracking it, she immediately shows disinterest. We apologize for interrupting her, and she promises to finish her story as long as we do everything right. She tells us that if she forgets, we're to remind her with a code word, but she says she'll think of one later and for now wants to keep looking for her fireflies. We inspect her school bag next, which is a little strange as she doesn't seem like she'd be capable of going to school. But according to her, she actually did like going to school. The rooms were bright and the beds were soft. And apparently, she went to every class, not skipping any. However, she never graduated. One day, her dad came to her school and picked her up earlier than usual, telling her that she was already too old for the school curriculum, which she also realized a while ago. Then, they got home, had dinner, and everyone went to their rooms. She nearly kicks the bag in rage, but stops just before making contact. Apparently, if she moves anything, even a little, she'll go blind. She spent a long time memorizing everything in her room, which is the only reason she can see everything so vividly. This would offer an explanation as to why the outside world looks like that from her point of view. Her own room and herself are the two things in this world she can really understand clearly. A firefly creeps out from her bag weakly, and she helps it out, bringing it to her ear as we continue to our final object of interest. Her sketchbook sits open on a stool as she mentions how, since half the pages are blank, it should be okay for a couple of years. When we ask why she draws so little, she mentions that to get a new notebook, she'd need to go on the bus, which would be an ordeal to say the least. She gets annoyed at us if we offer her just asking her mom for a new notebook, so we move on. She stares at the notebook, not wanting to look at the previous drawings, although a sudden gust of wind rustles the pages, making her close her eyes to avoid looking at the book. She keeps her eyes closed, knowing the book is on the first page, which she refuses to look at. We repeatedly tell her to calm down until she eventually does. When she opens her eyes, the notebook hasn't moved even a single page. Although, the pages begin to move suddenly again, and we try to get her to keep her eyes open this time. She can almost see the previous page, but we notice a firefly on the previous one. It takes a moment, but it does get into her ear, and we found all the fireflies. She congratulates us for finding all the fireflies, but still feels a little anxious. She figures that if she lost something, then finds it. She didn't really gain all that much in terms of positivity. She's tired though, it being way past midnight now. We tell her to get some fresh air, but she's nervous, worrying that someone's watching her. Although, if we convince her that nobody cares enough to watch her, she'll go outside. She leans over the railing, looking at the apartment building and all the lights inside of the windows, wondering if it's lonely living like that. We have a conversation with her as she steals glances at the abyss above her. She admits that she hasn't come up with a code word for her promise to finish her story, but that doesn't matter since she remembered her promise anyway. This makes her uncomfortable, as she didn't want to remember the promise. She leans forward and imagines herself falling. She has 2 minutes until she hits the ground. We watch her fall down the apartment spiral as she looks up where the abyss would be. She speaks about her online friend, her best friend even. He was breaking the rules of being online, but when we ask what they are, she doesn't want to tell us. If she says it out loud and makes a mistake, she keeps messing up until it doesn't make sense. When we say if that's the case she should never speak, she agrees with us, saying her dream is to just sleep forever. We get her back on track as she describes him making her believe he was real. Talking about a life she didn't believe he had and he expected her to do the same. Eventually, she did. He knew more about her than anyone else and sent an army of bots to harass her using that information. Tiny, unintelligent bits of code spreading her name across the web. She felt like everyone was watching her before, but now they were watching her from the screens. But before she can finish her next sentence, she slams into the floor. This is her second death. We return to her room as we and the girl acknowledge that that's it. She says she's going to sleep now and hopes that she dreams. But she won't take the pill that brings the voice back again. This is the last time she'll need us and the last time we'll see her. But before we go, she asks for one more favor. She's scared to tell us, though. She lays down, looking up at the ceiling. She tells us how when she first stopped dreaming, she began to imagine herself dreaming and developed insomnia. Eventually, she passed out in her room and began seeing things. She blames herself for it and stopped pretending to sleep, but she never really got rid of the things she saw. We tell her to use her hands to tell us what she wants, and she requests a bedtime story. We want to, but we don't know how, and she instructs us. Although, eventually she gives up and closes her eyes. Now, this video is already like 50 minutes long, and I really don't want to have to drag this out another 30 minutes. Milk Outside a Bag of Milk has 5 different endings, 3 of which are relatively easy to understand, but 2 of which are way more complex, so I'm going to try to make this fast while still explaining the details of these endings. Of course, like I said at the beginning of this video, I'm not an expert, and anything I say here is probably wrong, but just keep that in mind. The shop ending is the default ending of the game, and the first one you'll probably get. It follows the girl and a new boy named Tresca as she helps him get milk. This ending, as you could probably tell, mirrors the first game, especially with the boy going through most of the same things as the girl did, but now we see the world for what it really is as opposed to the monsters that the girl saw. However, Tresca struggles with buying milk, and similar to how the voice can choose to react with annoyance to the girl gets fed up with the boy's inability to buy milk and storms out of the shop with him. He looks at the girl, telling her that she's not helping him at all, in a similar fashion to the bad ending of the first game. There isn't a good explanation for why the boy is named and why he's the one needing help now, but perhaps this was her online friend and she's dreaming of helping him, despite what he did to her. The mirror ending is one of 2 flashback endings, signified by how the girl's color palette and general attitude of the ending are similar to real life. She repeats a mantra to herself as her face changes and distorts about how, despite thinking she looks bad, her looks don't define her. The faces in the mirror continue to distort in weirder and stranger ways until eventually, a version of her with no face appears, and she exclaims how excited she is for her first day. This is likely the girl feeling like if she acted less like herself and more like a faceless husk, she might stand out less at her school. The phone ending details a text conversation in which the girl speaks to a chatbot for a pizza website. She talks about her thoughts, how she feels lonely, but at the same time her mind keeps her company. She begins to talk about the void and escaping it, how her thoughts are no more special than anyone else's. She slowly starts adopting the idea that she's alone, and she keeps bouncing between not caring and caring about that fact. Eventually, she finds herself on a train track, looking up at a no crossing sign. This ending is vague like the others, but it does give us insight to the girl's thought process about her world and how she feels like she's the only one with these thoughts in her head. The sign at the end may be symbolic of her not feeling like she belongs anywhere, and it does notably share a resemblance to her sweater's design. The stair ending is the first really confusing ending, and it involves the girl waking up next to a large spiral of stairs sneaking around a column. The mere idea of how big this column is and the emptiness of where she is terrifies her, just thinking about it inflicting a cosmic horror level of fear. Against her better judgment, she turns her head to look behind her, revealing hundreds of other similar giant structures climbing into the empty air, something that can only be defined as a super being speaks to the girl in metaphors, and she attempts to set up a mind block, but it's unsuccessful, it's already taken hold of her mind. The super creature speaks of a play in which the main protagonist sees frightening visions and eventually ends up drowning. The girl continues climbing down the infinite spiral stairs as the creature continues, appearing to offer advice this time. I believe this ending is a representation of some kind of therapy the girl has undertaken in the past. The super creature being the therapist who the girl does not like. It's unclear if she doesn't like them due to them being bad or her just being unable to deal with the pressure to be fixed, but either way, she's clearly no longer doing it. The room ending starts with the girl waking up in a room with just a single door. The room is large and cold, giving an oppressing feeling to the girl. As she stands up from crouching to try and hide from whatever is on the other side of the door, the ceiling rises. She raises her hand and it continues to rise. She begins to chase the walls, but with each step they move further and further away. Eventually she reaches for the door with strange noises behind it, but it moves away too. She lunges at and curses out the door, realizing the gravity of the situation. A voice calls out from the other side of the door, giving the girl motivation to start running after it. She fights desperately to get to it, her entire body hurting as she runs for hours upon hours, chasing a door she's only getting inches closer to. She finally gets close and with a painful lunge outstretches her arm and grabs the handle. She wakes up in a field of grass staring at the moon, and she thinks she hears something in the distance as she sees a shadow. She tries to speak to it, and it begins to turn into several other shadowy creatures, causing her to fall down and they cover her. The end of the dream contains the same words that were at the beginning when the girl was describing the infinite room. The room represents the struggle of moving goalposts, especially for getting help. No matter how much she tries, it continues to go further and further. However, eventually, she does reach the door. The field and the people could possibly represent the web and the spam bots that would fill her life. The way they bring her back to the room is a way to tell us that after she was spammed, her struggle only got worse, especially after her father's death. After every ending, the same cutscene plays. The girl wakes up suddenly, brought to tears by the fact that, for the first time in a while, she's dreamt. We see her staring up at the abyss near her apartment complex, something that she used to be afraid of. Milk outside a bag of milk and looking up I see only a ceiling are two sides of the same coin. Looking up focuses on the kinds of struggles which, while still daunting, can be overcome or at least improved with time. Milk focuses on the kinds of struggles that cannot simply be dealt with. It gives us a glimpse into the mind of a character who is constantly faced with hardships and struggles that she cannot simply move on from. While it is hard for her, and while she does fail sometimes, she continues to put her foot forward and overcome small struggles in her day-to-day life. She isn't perfect, and that's the point. Milk Outside a Bag of Milk is not a game where the protagonist overcomes their struggles and is handed a get-out-of-jail-free card. She struggled before the game and will continue to struggle afterward. Looking Up is no different. While, in the moment, our protagonist seems to have overcome her initial problems, it's made clear that her stress and her overbearingness on herself has been a problem for a long time, and the coming sequel shows us that these accomplishments may not always be forever. Yet, our characters always have someone to help them. Both protagonists carry voices of reasons with them, whether it be their own self-consciousness or medicine. They have ways to deal with their problems. They never give up on themselves, and while they don't always succeed, they continue to try until something new happens. They push on and continue until they break the cycle of harm or allow themselves to dream once more. If you watched this far, I just want to thank you for watching all this way. This is a really long video, and I know this is completely unlike anything I've ever done before, so not everyone will watch this, and that's okay. But for those of you who do watch this, thank you so much. I love these games, and I just really wanted to share with somebody these incredible experiences. I know I already said this at the beginning of the video, but please, 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 please go buy these games. I already said this, they come in a bundle. Please buy them. There is so much I can't get into in this video because it would be like 5 hours long. These games are incredible and they're really thought-provoking, and there's so much I want to say that I just can't. So please go buy the games, go support the creators, go do all of that, please. And if you did like this video, subscribe maybe? I don't know if I'll do more of this stuff, but if this gets a lot of views, I probably will. But thanks to all of you for watching, it really means a lot, and see ya.